Chapter 1, the Sunday that tilted. Jake Mercer liked Sunday mornings because they asked very little of him. No alarm clock. No inbox. No Dave in the office break room microwaving fish like he was actively trying to test human patience in enclosed spaces. Sundays were coffee at a slower temperature, conversations that wandered, and the comforting knowledge that if something went wrong, at least he wasn't required to handle it before 9 a.m. At 32, Jake had learned to appreciate the quiet systems of a life that mostly worked. He liked his job, an unglamorous but satisfying role in operations at a mid-sized firm where spreadsheets obeyed logic and coworkers generally respected boundaries. He liked his apartment. He liked that he and Miranda had different toothbrush colors, so there was never an argument. He liked that their lives intersected without fully overlapping, like two circles that leaned into each other without disappearing. 3 years together. 2.5 living together. No dramatic fights. No shouting matches. No suspicious late-night phone calls that turned your stomach acidic. After what he'd been through before, the word stable felt almost luxurious. That relationship, the one before Miranda, still lived somewhere in his nervous system. It had ended months before a wedding that would have bankrupted him twice over. Once financially, once emotionally. He'd found out not because his fiancée confessed or grew a conscience, but because her maid of honor, who had despised him almost from the start, sent him a shaky video filmed under nightclub lighting at a bachelorette party that looked nothing like innocence. He'd learned a lesson that day. Several, actually. About denial. About sunk costs. About how toxic friends never stay external to a relationship. So when he met Miranda 5 years later, at a petting zoo of all places, something in him exhaled. He'd been there with his niece and nephew, armed with unlimited cotton candy and the optimism of an uncle trying to be remembered favorably. Miranda had been one of the handlers, patient as his niece bluntly corrected her incorrect assumption. "He's not Daddy," she'd said cheerfully. "He's Uncle Jake. And he likes cotton candy." Miranda had laughed. Jake had accepted his fate. Coffee turned into more coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into an intentional, slow-moving relationship built on clarity instead of chaos. She loved animals. He loved structure. Somehow it worked, which was why that Sunday morning felt exactly right, until it didn't. Jake pulled into his parents' driveway with the familiar sense of regression that came with visiting the house where you learned how to be a person. He hadn't even turned off the engine when the front door flew open and his parents emerged like they'd been fired from parenting. "Oh, Jake," his mom called, already halfway to the car. "Everything okay?" he asked, stepping out. "Emergency. Hospital," his dad said, keys jangling. "Friend of ours. We should have called." "Don't worry about it," Jake said immediately. "Go. I'll text." They were gone in under 30 seconds. Jake stood there for a beat, then checked his phone. Miranda was at her parents' place on Sundays. Sometimes they did family days together, sometimes separately. It was one of the things he admired about her. No guilt manipulation, no obligation theater. Just genuine connection. He turned the car around and drove the familiar route across town. When he pulled up, 2 cars sat in the driveway. Miranda's, and Beth's, her older sister. Normal, he thought. Tea on the patio, probably. They liked that. Rather than ring the bell and force pleasantries and standing up, he walked along the side of the house toward the back. He was close enough to hear voices before he registered them consciously. Miranda sounded tired. "I just get so tired of putting on a fake smile every day." Jake slowed. Her mother responded softly, the way mothers did when they thought something mattered. "Honey, come on. He can't be that bad." Miranda let out a sharp breath, half laugh, half something else. "He's suffocating." The word hit Jake in the chest like it had weight. "I can't breathe when he's around," Miranda continued. "Every time I'm trying to get something done, he interrupts me with something that could have waited. It's like he doesn't want me to finish anything unless he's involved." Jake stopped walking. His brain refused to contextualize what he was hearing, as though meaning itself had short-circuited. Her mother hummed sympathetically. "Have you talked to him about it?" Miranda snorted. "What am I supposed to say? Hey, can you stop being yourself?" Jake didn't hear what came next. His pulse had started roaring in his ears, drowning out the world in a rush of static panic. Suffocating. The word looped. He thought of the sticky notes he left for her sometimes. The way he checked in if she worked late. The meals he timed so they were warm when she arrived. The small interruptions. "Did you want tea? Did you see this?" The things he believed were love in action. She never said anything. Not once. Jake stepped backward like the ground might tilt further if he stayed. He made it back to his car and sat there, hands on the steering wheel, heart pounding in a way that felt physically misplaced, like it had shifted organs without permission. Humiliation flooded in next, hot and disorienting. How did I miss this? His past rose up like an old scar itching under pressure. He'd ignored signs before. He had trusted reassurances that weren't supported by reality. He started the engine. As he drove home, his thoughts chased each other in ugly circles. She hadn't said she didn't love him. That mattered, didn't it? Could you love someone and still feel trapped by them? He didn't want to be that man. If he was suffocating her, then he would stop. Not out of punishment, out of care. He would give her space. More space than she ever had to ask for. As Jake merged onto the road, what he didn't know, what would have changed everything, is that Miranda Adams wasn't talking about Jake Mercer at all. She was talking about a new manager at the zoo. And the silence that followed would hurt more than the truth ever could. Chapter 2, Course Correction. Jake Mercer approached Monday morning like a man handling a live wire. Not recklessly, never recklessly, but with deliberate caution, as though any wrong movement might trigger something irreversible. He woke before Miranda, slipped out of bed without the usual half-conscious kiss to her shoulder, and made coffee without grinding beans because that required noise, attention, and possibly conversation. Space, he reminded himself. This was space. He left a note on the counter. Hope you have a good day. Then stared at it for 30 seconds before folding it in half and dropping it in the trash. Notes were interruptions. Notes were pressure disguised as kindness. He left without waking her. At work, Jake channeled his discomfort into productivity. He finished a report ahead of schedule, reorganized a shared folder no one had complained about, and avoided Dave by memorizing his microwave schedule like an epidemiologist tracking outbreaks. It worked until Dave came in at 9:47 a.m. carrying a plastic container that smelled like betrayal. "That's fish," Jake said flatly. Dave shrugged. "Protein." Jake opened his mouth, closed it again, and turned back to his computer. Emotional restraint, he told himself, was transferable. If he could restrain the urge to fling Dave directly into the parking lot, he could restrain the urge to bother Miranda with unprompted affection. He just had to recalibrate. That evening, Miranda came home flushed and tired, her hair pulled into a messy bun that usually inspired Jake to comment on how unfair it was that she could look good without trying. He bit the compliment back like a reflex he was trying to unlearn. "Hey," she said, toeing off her shoes. "Hey," he replied, already making himself smaller in the room. She waited just a fraction longer than usual. "How was work?" "Fine," he said. "Yours?" "Exhausting," she said honestly, dropping onto the couch. "I swear, if I hear my name yelled from across the building one more time." Jake nodded. Encouraging but neutral. Miranda stopped mid-sentence. "Okay, so fine." He blinked. "Sorry, you're just short tonight." He felt heat crawl up his neck. "Did you want to talk about your day?" "Well, yeah, that's kind of what I was doing." He adjusted carefully. "I didn't want to interrupt." She frowned. "You weren't interrupting." Jake nodded again, though uncertainty had wrapped itself around his ribs. Old instincts tried to reassert themselves, to lean in, to engage, to fix. He let the silence hang instead. Miranda studied him with an expression that was neither irritated nor pleased, just curious. Dinner passed politely, too politely. Jake waited for cues like he was decoding a foreign language. When Miranda paused while cooking, he didn't ask if she wanted help. When she sighed, he didn't ask why. When she sat beside him on the couch, he resisted the urge to reach for her hand unless she initiated. She noticed. "This is new," she said eventually. Jake stiffened. "What is this?" she said, gesturing vaguely at the space between them. "You're acting like I'm fragile." "I am not." "Well, you're hovering without hovering." "It's impressive, honestly." That got a laugh out of him he didn't mean to let escape. "That's not my goal." "And what is your goal?" she asked gently. He hesitated just long enough to register as hesitation. "Just being more mindful," he said. She nodded, slowly. "Okay." But her eyes didn't look convinced. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake perfected withdrawal the way some people perfected charm. He responded instead of initiating. He waited instead of offering. He gave Miranda what he believed was freedom, uninterrupted time, emotional air, space to move without him in her path. Cost him more than he expected. He missed the small rituals, missed the way she leaned into his presence like gravity worked more strongly between them, missed making tea without being asked, missed the quiet joy of doing something for someone else without it being noticed. Meanwhile, Miranda noticed everything. "Did I say something?" she finally asked one night while they brushed their teeth side by side. Jake froze mid-rinse. "No, because you don't talk like you used to." He swallowed. "I talk. You respond," she said. "You used to add." She watched him in the mirror. "Did I hurt your feelings?" "No," he said too quickly. She frowned. "You would tell me, right?" The past guillotined the present. Jake saw a different woman, a different kitchen, heard assurances that hadn't meant safety. He forced himself back into the moment. "Yes," he said. "I would." Miranda searched his face for a long, quiet second, then nodded. At work, things were easier. Jake's world functioned better when boundaries were explicit. He could do quiet. He could be careful. But even there, cracks appeared. "You okay, man?" his coworker Lena asked during lunch. "You look like you're living inside your head." He shrugged. "Just trying not to mess things up." She snorted. "That's how you mess things up." He filed that away under unhelpful platitudes. At home, Miranda grew restless. She started staying later at work, bringing stress home that went unsoothed. She stopped reaching for him first. Jake told himself this was progress. This was what she wanted. Still, the word suffocating whispered every time he almost crossed the space he'd created. The strangest part was that no one was upset. There were no fights, No slammed doors, no raised voices. Just a growing quiet that didn't belong to either of them. And Jake, determined not to be the problem, never once asked the question that would have solved everything. Chapter 3. The absence becomes loud. Absence, Jake learned, was not the same thing as peace. It had a sound to it, a pressure. It hummed in the background of the apartment like an appliance left on in another room. Easy to ignore until you realized it had been there the whole time, drawing power, changing the atmosphere. Miranda noticed first. Not dramatically. Not with tears or accusations. Just with a small furrow between her brows that appeared when Jake passed on opportunities he used to take automatically. "Do you want to come with me?" she asked one Thursday evening, keys in hand. "To where?" he asked, heart already bracing. "Beth's," she said. "We're just having dinner. No pressure." Jake calculated. Beth meant conversation. Conversation meant engagement. Engagement meant the risk of suffocation. "I think I'll stay in," he said carefully. "You should go." Miranda's mouth tipped sideways. "You sure?" "Yeah. You haven't seen her in a couple weeks." She waited longer this time, then nodded and left. The apartment swallowed Jake whole once the door closed. He wandered from room to room, unsure why the quiet felt heavier when it was intentional. He ordered takeout he didn't really want, ate half of it, and stared at his phone as though it might accuse him of something. When Miranda came home later, flushed with wine and sisterly fatigue, she paused in the doorway. "Did you eat?" "Yes." "Good," she said, setting her purse down. "Beth sends her love." "That's nice." She watched him a moment. "You didn't have to avoid her, you know?" "I wasn't avoiding anyone." She smiled faintly. "Okay." But that night, she turned away from him in bed, not out of anger, out of confusion. Jake lay awake staring at the ceiling, convincing himself this discomfort was temporary. A course correction always felt wrong before it felt right. At work, Lena cornered him near the copier. "You're quieter," she said. "Did you join a monastery?" "No." "Well, something's going on." Jake hesitated. "Have you ever tried to fix something preemptively? Before it broke?" She raised an eyebrow. "That's not fixing. That's anxiety with a clipboard." He smiled weakly. "I'm trying to be better." She considered him. Better according to what metric? Not being a problem. Lena leaned against the machine. "Jake, people rarely feel smothered by someone who's paying attention. They feel smothered by someone who doesn't listen." Jake stiffened. "I am listening." "To what she said? Or to what you're afraid of hearing?" That question followed him home and sat down uninvited. Miranda cooked dinner that night with an intensity that suggested stress. Jake noticed. The tight set of her shoulders. The way she chopped vegetables like they'd personally offended her. "You want help?" he asked, stopping himself halfway between instinct and restraint. She looked up, surprised. "Yeah, actually." He stepped in carefully. "What do you need? Can you stir that?" "It needs to simmer, but not stick." He took the spoon. The normalcy of the act restored something involuntary in him, his body remembering how to exist beside her. "Thank you," she added quietly. They worked in near silence, but it wasn't empty. It was weighted, deliberate. "Works a lot lately," Miranda said finally, eyes on the pan. Jake nodded. He waited. She glanced sideways. "You're allowed to ask, right?" Of course he was. "What's making it hard?" he asked. She exhaled. "Management stuff. People who shouldn't be micromanaging everything somehow managing everything. Sounds frustrating." "It is." She paused, then added, "I'm not used to feeling like I can't escape my job even when I leave it." Jake's chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with recognition. He wanted to say "I'm here," wanted to remind her he had always been the steady place she landed. Instead, he stirred. Later that night, Miranda sat curled on the couch, increasingly restless. Jake sat beside her with space that now felt performative. "Do you not like sitting next to me anymore?" she asked suddenly. He turned. "What? No." "Then why do you keep hovering like you're afraid of touching me?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I just don't want to annoy you." She stared. "Annoy me?" "Yes." "With what?" "With me." Silence dropped between them, brittle and confused. Miranda frowned. "Jake, when have you ever annoyed me?" He had no safe answer. "I'm going to take a shower," she said eventually, standing. "I'm exhausted." As the bathroom door closed, Jake pressed his fingers to his eyes. He was trying so hard, and still missing something fundamental. The next morning, Miranda left early without waking him. When he found her mug unwashed in the sink, the absence roared. That night, she didn't stay late, but she came home holding stress like a live animal. "Long day?" Jake asked. She nodded. "I snapped at someone." "That's not like you." She gave a humorless laugh. "Apparently, I've reached my limit." She sat heavily at the table. Jake sat across from her, every instinct screaming to close the distance. He held. "Do you feel like I'm not supporting you?" she asked abruptly. He blinked. "What?" "Because it feels like you're somewhere else lately. Like I lost you without being told." The truth pressed against his teeth, desperate to be spoken. but fear held it back. "No," he said. "I'm here." She looked unconvinced. "Well," she said quietly, "I hope so, because I don't want space. I want partnership." That night, Miranda fell asleep before him. Jake lay awake with the echo of her words lodged in his chest, realizing too late that silence, chosen without consent, could bruise just as deeply as neglect. And somewhere in the growing quiet, the misunderstanding continued to grow roots. Chapter 4, The Manager Problem. Miranda Adams loved her job. That wasn't a phrase she used lightly. She loved the smell of hay and sunscreen and warm animal fur. Loved the way children gasped the first time a goat ate from their hands like it was the most miraculous betrayal of personal space they'd ever experienced. Loved the rhythm of care, the feeding schedules, the cleaning, the quiet moments when an anxious animal learned to trust. The zoo had been her place, a sanctuary that didn't follow her home. Until 3 weeks ago. "Miranda," Greg called from across the enclosure, his voice slicing through the peaceful morning like someone had dropped a metal tray. She closed her eyes for exactly 1 second before pasting on her professional smile. "Yes, Greg." Her new manager strode toward her, clipboard tucked under his arm like a weapon. He had the confident gait of someone who mistook proximity to authority for expertise. "Did you finish the signage updates?" he asked, peering over her shoulder. "Yes, they're laminated and posted. Like you asked." He leaned closer, invading her space. "Well, I was thinking maybe we should redo them. The font seems aggressive." She blinked. "Aggressive?" "Yeah, kids respond better to softer fonts. It's Comic Sans," she said carefully. "Exactly." She opened her mouth, closed it, then smiled again. "Fake. Automatic." "Sure," she said. "We can revisit it." "Great, great," Greg said, already turning away. "Oh, and next time, run it by me first before making executive decisions." Miranda stared at his retreating back, jaw clenched. She had been making executive decisions in this enclosure for 6 years. By the time she got home that evening, her shoulders ached from holding tension instead of animals. Jake was already there, reading on the couch. "How was your day?" he asked, warmth easy in his voice. She smiled, real this time. "Long." He shifted like he might stand, then stopped himself. The movement caught her attention. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just here." She frowned slightly but let it go, curling up beside him. If she noticed that he didn't automatically reach for her anymore, she told herself she was imagining it. Over the next week, Greg became a presence rather than a person. Always just behind her, watching, correcting, redirecting work she had already mastered. He interrupted her trainings, contradicted her in front of interns, and once took credit for an enrichment program she developed after hours. She vented where it felt safest. At lunch with Beth. "He doesn't stop," Miranda said, stabbing a fork through her salad. "I can't finish a single task without him hovering." Beth winced. "That's gross." "He's suffocating," Miranda continued, rubbing her temple. "I can't breathe when he's around. Every time I'm trying to get something done, he inserts himself like he's allergic to independence." Beth nodded emphatically. "You should talk to HR." "I know. Miranda sighed. "I come home exhausted from pretending I'm fine." She hadn't realized how deeply the frustration had rooted until she'd spoken it aloud that Sunday at her parents' house. The words had poured out faster than she could moderate them. "I just get so tired of putting on a fake smile every day." Her mother had rubbed her arm sympathetically. "Well, he can't be that bad." Miranda had laughed sharply. "Oh, he can." Felt good to offload it. To name the problem. What she didn't know was that those words had landed somewhere else entirely. At home, the change in Jake was subtle but undeniable. He listened differently. Less overlapping speech, fewer follow-ups. He stopped doing things before she asked, which initially felt like relief until it felt like absence. She came home one night desperate to be held, to be reminded she wasn't alone, with Greg's voice still echoing in her head. Jake stood when she entered, then hesitated, hands at his sides. "You look tired," he said. "I am. Do you want some space?" The question felt off. "No," she said slowly. "I want you." He nodded once, then waited, as if permission was something new. Miranda took the step herself, pressing her forehead into his chest. His arms came around her like they always had, but a beat too late. The delay mattered. "What's going on with you?" she whispered. "Nothing," he said, though his voice carried something guarded. At work, Miranda snapped at a volunteer who hadn't done anything wrong. She apologized immediately, guilt flooding her. Greg noticed. "Everything all right?" he asked, tone falsely concerned. "Yes," she said through clenched teeth. "You know," he continued, lowering his voice, "sometimes personal life stuff bleeds into work. It's important to compartmentalize." Miranda stared at him. She went home that night vibrating with rage she had nowhere to put. Jake was cooking. He stirred sauce with meticulous focus. "Did you have a good day?" she asked. "It was fine. Just fine." "Yes." She leaned against the counter, watching him. "You can ask me questions, you know?" "I know," he replied. "Do you not care anymore?" The words escaped before she could soften them. He turned fully toward her. That's not fair. What's not fair is feeling like my partner is pulling away without telling me why. A beat of heavy silence fell between them. I'm trying not to interfere, he said slowly. With what? With you. Her brow furrowed. Jake, when have you ever interfered with me? He looked away. The distance between them was no longer subtle. It was structured, maintained. At work the next day, Greg interrupted her again, this time mid-sentence during a tour, redirecting attention to a fact he had misremembered. Miranda cut him off cleanly. That's actually incorrect, she said coolly. The meerkats are active throughout the day, not nocturnal. Greg's smile twitched. Well, and maybe next time, she added evenly. Let me finish. This is my program. The silence that followed was exquisite. That evening, she came home feeling both empowered and wrung out. Jake was on the couch again, laptop closed, like he'd been waiting. How was the zoo? He asked. She kicked off her shoes. I think I finally cracked. He smiled faintly. In a good way? In a stood-up-to-my-manager way. He blinked. Your manager? Yes, she said, eyes narrowing slightly. Greg, the human manifestation of hovering. Something in Jake's face shifted, so fast she might have imagined it. Is he the one making work hard? He asked carefully. Yes, she said emphatically. He's insufferable. Suffocating. The word hung in the air. Jake went very still. Miranda tilted her head. Why? He swallowed. And in that moment, balanced on the edge of revelation, the truth pressed close enough to be felt. But it still hadn't been spoken. Chapter 5, nearly breaking, there was a particular cruelty to the way nothing exploded. Jake had always thought that the end of something important would announce itself. Raised voices, slammed doors, a moment you could point to afterward and say there. That was it. But the days with Miranda didn't fracture that way. They wore thin instead, stretched by silence and softened boundaries, until even the good moments felt conditional. They still laughed sometimes. That somehow was worse. Friday night came with the promise of relief. Miranda had texted on her way home. Long week. Wine and trash TV? Jake had stared at the message longer than necessary. Sounds good, he replied. Neutral. Safe. She arrived home carrying a bottle and a tension headache, setting the wine on the counter with a sigh. If I hear one more person tell me to circle back, she muttered, I might scream. Jake nodded. He fetched glasses without asking. You don't have to be so careful, she said suddenly. He froze mid-pour. Careful how? Like you're afraid of setting something off. She took the glass from him, brushing his fingers briefly. I'm not made of glass. I know. Do you? She asked quietly. They sat on the couch, wine between them, reality TV murmuring in the background. Miranda leaned against him out of habit. Jake stilled, then forced himself to relax. She noticed. See, she said softly. You do that. I don't mean to. Then why do you? The question hovered, fragile but insistent. I heard something, he said suddenly. Her head lifted. Heard something? At your parents' place. A few weeks ago. Her brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I wasn't supposed to. He rushed. He stopped. This was the edge. The moment. The choice. Miranda waited, her expression open but wary now. I thought you were talking about me, he finished lamely. A beat passed. Then another. When? She asked. That Sunday. When I came over. I heard you say someone was suffocating. That you couldn't breathe when he was around. Miranda stared. You thought I was talking about you? Her voice wasn't angry. It was wounded. Disbelief layered over hurt. Jake swallowed. You never said his name. Jake, she said slowly. I was talking about my manager. Realization struck him like a physical blow. The room tilted, harder this time, sharper. Oh, he whispered. She set her wine down carefully. Is that why you've been doing this? Yes, he admitted hoarsely. I didn't want to hurt you. Or trap you. Miranda stood abruptly, pacing once, twice. So instead of asking me, you decided to disappear? I didn't disappear. You did, she said. Emotionally. You left without telling me why. I was trying to fix it. She turned on him. You don't fix something by sanding yourself down until you're unrecognizable. Shame burned through him. I thought I was being considerate. You were being silent. The words landed with brutal accuracy. Miranda pressed her palms to her face. Do you know how alone I've felt lately? I've been drowning at work, and the one place I expect to be able to breathe suddenly felt empty. I didn't know, he said. You didn't ask. The apartment hummed with unresolved truth. Jake's voice cracked. Last time I ignored signs, everything fell apart. I promised myself I'd never miss them again. She softened just a fraction. This wasn't a sign. This was a mistake. I know, he whispered. And I'm so sorry. She sat back down, exhaustion pulling her inward. I don't need less of you, Jake. I need you, present, honest, not perfect. He nodded, tears threatening. I can do that. She leaned into him this time, deliberate and sure. We talk. Even when it's uncomfortable. He wrapped his arms around her, holding on like a promise. Always. The TV continued playing, unheard. The wine went untouched. They didn't solve everything that night, but the silence finally broke. And for the first time in weeks, the space between them felt chosen, not enforced. Chapter 6, Dave and the fish incident. The thing about suppression, emotional, psychological, or olfactory, is that it always leaks somewhere. Jake Mercer had been patient. He had been so patient that if restraint were a measurable metric, he'd have qualified for a plaque on the wall. He listened more than he spoke. He asked instead of assumed. He occupied less space in a life where he used to fit naturally. What he had not accounted for was Dave, specifically Dave's fish. At 11:38 a.m., Jake stood in the break room stirring powdered creamer into his coffee when the microwave beeped. That alone wasn't alarming. The smell that followed should have come with an evacuation protocol. Jake froze mid-stir. "Oh, come on," he muttered. Dave opened the microwave with the casual confidence of a man who had never faced consequences. Steam rolled out carrying the unmistakable scent of reheated salmon. Dense, lingering, aggressive. "Dave," Jake said carefully. Dave looked up. "Yeah, that's fish." "Correct," Dave said proudly. "Leftovers." Jake closed his eyes. He counted to 3. He had been practicing counting. "That microwave," Jake said, voice still even, "is shared." Dave shrugged. "That's why I bring protein. Everyone benefits." No, they did not. Jake inhaled through his nose and immediately regretted it. Something inside him, the perfect, brittle balance he'd been maintaining for weeks, split clean down the center. "You can't microwave fish in a communal space," he said. Dave frowned. "Why not?" "Because it lingers. So does coffee," Dave shot back. Jake laughed, surprised both of them. "That smell will be here until Wednesday," Jake said, smiling thinly. "It will outlive us." Dave scoffed. "You're overreacting." "That was it." "No," Jake said, volume rising just enough to gather attention from nearby cubicles. "What I'm doing is reacting appropriately to a repeated violation of social contract." Dave blinked. "Wow." "No, wow is you bringing seafood into a windowless room and acting like that's normal. Relax, man." "I can't relax," Jake snapped. "I have been relaxing for weeks. This," he gestured wildly at the microwave, "is where I draw the line." The room had gone silent. Lena appeared in the doorway, eyes bright with interest. Dave crossed his arms. "It's just lunch." "It's not just lunch," Jake said. "It's a statement. And the statement is that you don't care how anyone else feels." Pause. "Well," Dave said defensively, "no one's complained before." Jake laughed again. Sharp this time. "They have. Just not to you." Lena coughed, poorly disguising it as a laugh. Dave grabbed his container. "Whatever." Jake exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. The silence after Dave's retreat was charged, but not uncomfortable. A few people nodded at Jake as they passed. Lena gave him a thumbs up. "Cathartic?" she asked. Jake sagged. "Embarrassing." "No," she said. "Necessary." That word followed him home. Miranda was already there, curled on the couch with a blanket and her laptop. She looked up as he came in. "You look lighter," she observed. "I yelled at Dave," he admitted. She smiled instantly. "The fish guy." "Yes, Jake," she said reverently. "I'm proud of you." He laughed, dropping his bag. "I didn't mean to explode." "You didn't explode," she said. "You asserted. There's a difference." They sat together easily. The earlier tension eased, not erased but loosened. "I realized something today," Jake said after a moment. She turned toward him. "Yeah. I've been so focused on not being a burden that I forgot I'm allowed to take up space too." Miranda smiled softly. "I was wondering when you'd remember that." He met her gaze. "I don't want to disappear when things get hard." "Good," she said. "Because I don't want a relationship where one of us shrinks to make peace." He nodded. "Deal." She leaned her head on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her without hesitation. The apartment felt warmer. Lived in again. Miranda sighed contentedly. "For the record, my manager is still a nightmare." Jake huffed. "One workplace tyrant at a time." She smiled. "Thank you for listening again." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for calling me back." And for the first time since that Sunday, the quiet between them felt comfortable, not avoided. Chosen. Chapter 7, The Wrong Mailbox. The realization didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, sharp, belated realizations sliding into place long after they should have been obvious. Jake sat at his desk the morning after Miranda mentioned her manager again, staring at a spreadsheet he'd opened and not truly seen, his mind replaying her words with brutal clarity. "My manager. Greg. Human manifestation of hovering." He leaned back in his chair and dragged his hands down his face. He hadn't misheard her. He'd misfiled her. The conversation at her parents' house replayed in its entirety now, stripped of panic and assumption. The frustration, the fatigue, the context he'd filled in himself because fear was faster than logic. Suffocating. Not him. Never him. Jake let out a laugh that didn't sound amused. It sounded embarrassed, mortified. Dave walked past his desk, holding a mug that blessedly smelled like coffee. Everything okay? Dave asked suspiciously. Jake waved him off. I accidentally emotionally sabotaged my relationship because I didn't ask a follow-up question. Dave blinked. Wow. Yeah. Dave nodded. That tracks. Jake went home early that day. Not dramatically, just a normal end-of-day departure that felt heavier than usual. By the time he reached the apartment, the weight had fully settled into something solid and unavoidable. Miranda was at the kitchen table grading volunteer evaluations, brow furrowed in concentration. Hey, she said, surprised. Everything okay? He set his bag down slowly. We need to talk. Her expression shifted, not panic, but readiness. Okay, she said. What's up? I owe you an apology, he began. A real one. She closed her laptop. I'm listening. I heard your words, he said carefully. But I didn't hear you. I let my past decide what you meant, and instead of trusting you, I trusted my fear. Miranda absorbed that quietly. I don't blame you for being hurt, he continued. You never asked for space. I imposed it and called it care. She exhaled slowly. I didn't know whether to reach for you or give you room. I kept guessing wrong. I know, he said, and that's on me. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't brittle. It was open. I don't want to repeat that pattern, he said. Ever. If something scares me, I talk to you, even if it means being wrong. Miranda's eyes softened. Being wrong isn't what scares me. He nodded. Losing you does. She reached across the table and took his hand. You don't lose people by asking questions, she said. You lose them by withdrawing without explanation. A beat. And just so we're clear, she added, squeezing his fingers. You have never suffocated me. Jake swallowed. Thank you. That night, they didn't fix everything. But they didn't avoid anything either. They talked about boundaries, about fear, about how easily good intentions could derail into harm if left unspoken. It was messy, honest, real. And when they went to bed, Jake didn't hesitate before pulling her close. In the quiet, Miranda murmured, Tomorrow, I'm filing a complaint about Greg. He smiled into her hair. I support that fully. Space, she added sleepily, is something you choose together. Jake kissed her forehead. Lesson learned. The wrong mailbox had caused damage, but the message itself was finally understood. And this time, it stayed where it belonged. Chapter 8. Owning the silence, humiliation, Jake discovered, had layers. There was the initial, sharp version, the realization that he had reoriented his entire behavior around a misunderstanding. Then there was the quieter, lingering version that followed him through the next few days, showing up in small moments when he remembered how easily he could have prevented the damage. All he'd had to do was ask. That truth followed him into the office, where Dave, inexplicably reformed, heated soup that smelled aggressively like vegetables. Jake eyed the microwave in mild suspicion. You good? Lena asked, sliding into the chair across from him during lunch. He nodded. Better. That better looks like someone who learned something uncomfortable. Jake smiled faintly. That obvious? Growth has a look, she said. Mostly regret and caffeine. He laughed. I earned it. At home, Miranda was quieter. Not distant, but thoughtful. Repair took energy. Jake didn't rush her. This time, he stayed present without pushing. Thursday night, she folded laundry while he dried. A mundane ritual restored. I talked to HR today, she said. Jake looked up. How'd it go? They listened, she said. Documentation helped. Apparently, I'm not the only one. Good. She folded a t-shirt carefully. I almost didn't say anything. Why? Because I didn't want to be seen as difficult. Jake set the towel down. You stood up for yourself. There's nothing difficult about that. She studied him. You really mean that? I do. A pause, then, I'm still mad, she added calmly. He nodded. That's fair. But not at you, she said. At the situation. At how easily things went sideways. Jake swallowed. I hate that I hurt you. I know, she said gently. What hurt wasn't that you misheard. It was that you disappeared without trusting me with why. He met her eyes. I won't do that again. She smiled, but it was tired. I don't need perfection. I need participation. He reached for her hand. She let him. Later that night, lying in bed, Miranda rolled onto her side to face him. Can I ask you something hard? She said. Yes. Are you still afraid? She asked softly. That I'll wake up one day and decide you're not enough? The question cut deeper than he expected. Yes, he admitted. Sometimes. She touched his face. Then tell me when that fear shows up. Don't let it talk for you. He nodded, voice tight. Deal. They lay there, breathing in sync, neither trying to fix the moment, just letting it exist. The next morning, Jake did something small but intentional. He left a note on the counter. I'm here. Come find me anytime. He didn't second guess it. He didn't delete it. Miranda found it, smiled, and tucked it into her bag. Some damage took patience to heal. But honesty, once reintroduced, had a way of knitting things back together stronger than before. And for the first time, Jake understood that love didn't require shrinking or hovering. It required choosing each other out loud.